It's the 1930s in a small village of Beauregard, Mississippi. A figure appears in the darkness at the local cemetery, silently moving between the graves and stopping at a dilapidated bench. A minute later, sounds begin to come from the territory of the cemetery. It was not the hellish ringing of chains from the underworld or the choral sounding of heavenly trumpets. The deathly silence was broken by the professional and virtuoso blues performed by Isaiah Zimmerman. Ike was a damn good musician with his own style and outstanding technique. It was rumored that a talented man playing in the graveyard at midnight attained his skills in a supernatural way. Over the years, Ike would become a tiny part of one of the most famous myths in the history of music. And all because around 1931, a 20-year-old man named Robert Johnson came to him. He asked Zimmerman to teach him how to play the guitar. Ike welcomed the young man into his family and began teaching him, but many did not believe that in just 1 year, the untalented Johnson had become a blues god only through Isaiah's lessons. There is a theory that the musician made a deal with the devil. The classic scheme of the agreement provides for the sale of the soul, but in this story, there is one important detail. The bills were to be paid at a certain age, namely at 27 years old, when Johnson died for unknown reasons. Years later, the musician would become the first legendary member of an exclusive unofficial community known as 27 Club. To get there, you need not much, not a little, but the most. You need to be a world-famous creative person, preferably a musician, and die at the age of 27. Some of the most famous members of the 27 Club are Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, and Amy Winehouse. In total, the list includes almost 80 people who have died at different times since the end of the 19th century. The cultural phenomenon periodically attracts public attention. It became so popular that there was even scientific research on this topic. Before finding out what scientists have discovered, let's return to the history of the origin of the concept of the 27 Club itself. Over the course of 2 years from 1969 to 1971, and at the age of 27, 4 music legends died at once: Rolling Stones creator Brian Jones, guitar virtuoso Jimi Hendrix, The Doors frontman Jim Morrison, and the Queen of Rock and Roll Janis Joplin. Such a coincidence could not go unnoticed. But the phenomenon gained real popularity after the death of Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain. When his mother commented on the tragedy, she remembered how she had told her son not to join this stupid club. Among other things, she allegedly spoke about the 4 mentioned earlier. Since then, the concept of 27 Club has come into use. The author of a book on this cultural phenomenon, Eric Siegelstad, offered a different explanation. The death of Cobain is considered suicide, although a version with a violent death was considered. It turns out that the musician's family had 3 cases of suicide. His great-uncle and 2 uncles committed suicide. Siegelstad believes that Cobain's mother talked about this family club. The musician's body was found only 3 days after his death. It happened on April 5, 1994. Cobain died in his own home in Seattle. He had a wound in his head, a shotgun was on his body, and next to him was a suicide note, though it was more like a nearly 600-word essay. In it, Cobain says that he stopped enjoying music and became a bundle of nerves and pain. The most famous phrase of his farewell speech says that it is better to flare up and burn out than to gradually fade away. The death of Cobain caused a real explosion in society. Fans demanded to investigate the incident as murder. Conspiracy theorists shouted that the musician killed himself at this age in order to join the 27 Club. But Charles R. Cross, Cobain's biographer, believes that the reason for the appearance of the term and the hoaxes surrounding it was the media, the development of the internet and television, together with the dead musician's mother's controversial words about a certain club, triggered an irreversible reaction. In 2008, famed British singer Amy Winehouse expressed fears of joining 27 Club when she was 25 years old. Imagine the power with which stories of the infamous phenomenon burst into the world again when Winehouse died at the age of 27. It happened on July 23, 2011 in her London apartment. The appearance of a new member in 27 Club prompted a group of scientists to conduct a statistical study. They decided to find out if creative people really are more likely to die at the age of 27. But while scientists were collecting and analyzing data, astrologers have long answered this question. Among their beliefs is the concept of Shade Sati, which in Sanskrit means the return of Saturn. According to this theory, the impact of this planet brings difficulties, disappointments, obstacles, and self-denial into a person's life, which leads to depression and reckless behavior. Astrological influence begins at about the age of 27, sometimes a little earlier or later. This power affects all people, but given the emotionality and other characteristics of creative personalities, for them, the impact of Saturn can be fatal. There is another theory explaining the phenomenon of 27 Club. It is not related to either astrology or science. Its adherents believe that all members of the club have made a deal with the devil. Allegedly, in exchange for their extraordinary creativity, people sold their souls, and the cost must be paid at the age of 27. Let's return to the story of Robert Johnson, which gave rise to the emergence of the devil theory. In 1930, in Robbinsville, 19-year-old Robert first attempted to become a musician. The young man watched the play of famous bluesmen Son House and Willie Brown. Johnson plucked up the courage and took to the stage during the break, playing his own music. The audience booed him, and the owners threw him out of the venue. But the criticism from his idols was a huge blow for the aspiring musician. A year later, House and Brown met an inept musician walking down the street with a guitar. They laughed that the guy again decided to drive somebody crazy with his rumbling. And in response, Johnson took the guitar off his back and began to play. He had an instrument with a 7th string, which bluesmen had never seen before, and the technique and sound turned out to be as if someone was playing 3 hands on the piano. It couldn't be the same talentless guy they met a year ago, but it was. Johnson began to gain popularity and recognition, but managed to record only 29 songs, and that was all, a year before his death. Among them are several particularly newsworthy. In them, the musician sings about how the devil comes for his soul, and in the famous Crossroad Blues, the musician sings, "I went to the crossroad, fell down on my knees, asked the Lord above, have mercy now, save poor Bob if you please." Unsurprisingly, legend has it that Johnson made a deal with Satan at the crossroads. It happened at the intersection of Highways 49 and 61 in Clarksdale, Mississippi. The devil played his guitar, thus bestowing incredible skills, and then took the debt when the musician turned 27 years old. At this age, references to Johnson disappeared. Only a few decades later, a certificate of his death was found. The musician died on August 16, 1938 for unknown reasons. His body was found on the side of the road. No autopsy or investigation was carried out. Later it became known that he studied guitar with Isaiah Zimmerman. The man did not gain popularity, but was an incredible virtuoso. In order not to disturb the inhabitants of his native village, he often went to play in the cemetery. Johnson lived with Ike's family for about a year. They probably wrote some of the lyrics and music together. In addition, it turns out that the crossroads referred to in the myth of the deal with the devil does not exist. It didn't even exist during the life of the musician. Most likely it was a metaphor about the need to make a choice between good and evil. And the cause of Johnson's death was not really known. Subsequent investigations showed the musician had congenital syphilis. Trying to figure out the mystery of 27 Club, a group of scientists conducted research. The results appeared in the British Medical Journal in 2011 after the death of Amy Winehouse. The researchers created a sample of British musicians whose albums topped the charts in the country between 1956 and 2007. Of the 522 musicians at risk, only 3 have died at the age of 27. The same indicator was found among 25 and 32-year-olds. The conclusion of the scientists were confirmed by an article published in The Independent in 2015. Of the 11,054 musicians from 1950 to 2010, 144 performers died at the age of 27, which is 1.3%. And after the 28th anniversary, 153 people died. The highest death rate was found among 56-year-olds, 239 people, or 2.2%. This indicates that there is no peak risk of death at the age of 27. At the same time, it turned out that not everything is so simple. Compared to the general population of Great Britain, the risk of dying at 20 to 30 for famous musicians is 2 to 3 times higher. Why? Jimi Hendrix choked on his own vomit after taking barbiturates. Janis Joplin died of a heroin overdose. Jim Morrison was killed by a heart attack caused by drugs. Amy Winehouse was poisoned by strong alcohol. Its level in the singer's blood was 416 milligrams per deciliter of blood. A fatal dose can be 300 milligrams. Kurt Cobain started using heroin at the age of 20. The body of the Rolling Stones founder and leader, Brian Jones, was found in a swimming pool in July 1969. The incident was recognized as an accident, but an autopsy showed that the musician's internal organs were damaged due to the constant use of drugs and alcohol. 27 Club also includes Canned Heat leader Alan Wilson, who died of an overdose of barbiturates, Grateful Dead member Ron McKernan, and the Stooges guitarist Dave Alexander. Both died of alcohol-related illnesses. Bass player for Uriah Heep and Kristen Pfaff, bassist for Hole, all passed away after a drug overdose. To be fair, 27 Club also has people from other creative professions who have died due to illness or accidents. But this cultural phenomenon is due to the hot and reckless nature of rock and roll players. All of them flashed brightly and burned to the ground, not allowing themselves to slowly fade away. Perhaps it is their fire that fuels the myth of the 27 Club to this day.